Severed Steel is a game that's been on my backlog for a long time. It looked fun, but I just never really got around to it. In fact, the Severed Steel devs messaged me in January of last year because apparently one of their level designers by the name of Oros likes my content. Sorry if I mispronounced that. That kind of stuff means a lot to me, it's awesome to hear. But they also gave me an extra key to do whatever I wanted to, so I'm gonna give it away to one of you. The only requirement is that you be subscribed to this channel. Once you've done that, you can just leave a comment down below and I will choose the winner. Hey, Jarek here. Severed Steel is part of a subgenre of first-person shooters I like to refer to as woo shooters. What is a woo shooter? Well, woo shooters are games inspired by F.E.A.R. F.E.A.R. being inspired by John Woo movies. The best way to describe those movies are gun fu with lots of practical effects. This kind of stuff translates so well into video games, I sort of wish it became the standard. Or at least it didn't take so long to get more games inspired by F.E.A.R., but we're getting them now, so I'm not complaining. Okay, so Severed Steel. Let's start with the graphics. Severed Steel's graphics aren't the newest, most high-tech thing I've ever seen, but they definitely look good. There's a certain stylized look to all these arenas, and boy do they love their neon lights. I'm not complaining. Something about this game just looks good to me. Let alone at the end of combat where there's holes in every wall imaginable. I'm also pretty glad that they decided not to run with the retro Quake style graphics. Don't get me wrong, those can look fine and dandy, but man, we have way too many games that look like that now. I will happily accept more half-likes and woo shooters and less boomer shooters. Nothing against boomer shooters, but I would like the nostalgia cycle to kick forward one generation. As for the PC release, I didn't have any crashing issues, everything ran smooth. For the most part, all was fine. I did find that the mouse felt really bad though, at least until I capped the frame rate at 60 FPS. I don't know why, but it felt like I was dragging my mouse, or at least something was pulling on my mouse. I didn't feel like mouse acceleration, it just felt off. When I limited my frame rate to 60, this fixed it. I don't know why this is happening. It didn't max my GPU even at 120 FPS, so I'm not really sure what's going on here. Music-wise, it fits the chaos happening in the game, and production quality is very good. On a subjective level, I don't think it would be music I would listen to outside of the game, but it's certainly not bad. That said, I can't play it in this video because it's in YouTube's Content ID system. As a side note for developers everywhere, please don't add your music into YouTube's Content ID system. It adds a legal loophole to go around when we're trying to make content, and it's just a total pain. Story-wise, it doesn't really have one. There's some cutscenes, but there's not really a cohesive story, there's no dialogue, there's not even any text. The only information I picked up is that you were playing as a badass woman with one arm. And this is actually really clever. This ties in really well with the gameplay. If you only have one arm, this means you can't reload weapons, but this also means you're not questioning why you can't reload weapons. Once you run out of ammo with a weapon, you're going to have to drop it or throw it at an enemy and pick up another one. This encourages you to constantly be on the move and change your playstyle drastically depending on the weapon you're holding. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I need to talk about the basics first. Let's talk about the movement. Your movement is very fast in this game. There's no sprinting, you just move fast by default. You can double jump, you can wall run, you can kick off of walls, you can slide, and you can dive. The diving is awesome, but kind of awkward until you figure out how it works. The dive is actually one of the complaints I have, because once you dive, you are full on committing to that dive. At no point can you cancel this dive, you have to land. In any other game, yeah, that's fair. In this game, it's a little weird. Something I neglected to mention is that when you were diving, you were literally invincible. As you were doing stunts, the enemies cannot shoot you, so being able to cancel your dive into another dive would be really broken, but I think there's ways to get around this. If you cancel your dive in the middle of the air, then you shouldn't be able to dive again until you land. And for the love of God, you should be able to cancel a dive into a wall run. It feels really bad to slide your face down an entire wall to your death because you just can't wall run despite the fact that you're touching a wall. Diving also makes aiming really odd. As you are diving, you can do flips. This doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but it actually changes your aim entirely. You will adjust to it rather quickly, but you're going to have to come up with new muscle memory for when you are diving. I kind of wish there was a button I could select that would let me do that flip and it wouldn't change like this. But once you get that muscle memory, it's not too big of a deal. And to a lesser extent, that applies to basically all of the movement. There's a bit of a learning curve to this movement, but not in the traditional get good kind of way. More in the kind of janky, awkward way until you figure out how the game works. It's that kind of endearing jank. You have this game you really like and there's something that's odd, but you fully understand how it works because you played it enough to get it. That's what the movement feels like in this game. With that said, it's not hard at all to pull this stuff off. It won't take you very long before you adjust. This game is very good at making you look and feel like a total badass. You have so many options. When you get close to an enemy, you can kick them and grab their gun. If you're close to them at all, you can just grab their secondary. It doesn't even matter if you kick them or not. And as you have probably noticed, you have an extremely liberal amount of slow motion. My main goal when I was playing this game was to chain as many kills as I can to continue the slow motion. That's what the bar is underneath the crosshair. That's your slow motion meter. When you kill an enemy, you get some of that slow motion back. Chaining together kill after kill and just playing almost the whole level in slow motion feels so satisfying. And so do the weapons. They don't feel tremendously different from one another. If they fill an archetype, you can pretty much look at them and know what they're going to do, but all of them feel very satisfying. They feel like a weapon that will do damage. Nothing in this game has that pea shooter feeling. They have a good impact on target. But there's one weapon in particular that stands out above all the others to me. That's the flamethrower. This flamethrower feels less like a flamethrower and more like you're using force push but with fire. Oh my lord, do I love this. I'm leaving something important out though. You get another weapon that you attach to your arm. This weapon is very important because it totally changes how you play the game. This weapon allows you to make holes in walls. Every level is going to have a different mission, but a lot of this game is very vertical, so being able to put a hole in the ceiling or a wall, it changes everything. Instead of having to try to find your way around the map to get 2 floors up, just put a hole in the ceiling. And obviously with a weapon like this, if you shoot an enemy, they just explode. Speaking of enemies, they are all similar but different enough to force you to target certain ones before others. The main difference you will notice is that some of them have more armor than others, but they're all squishy on the inside. Also, the ones with more armor probably have more intimidating weapons, like say the flamethrower units. Now, these units should scare me, but if I kill them, I get their flamethrower, so I love these units. Actually though, they have a tank on their back, just shoot the tank. And yeah, that basically describes the whole single player. There's not actually too much to say about the single player. What you see is what you get. It's just really fun. Here's the thing though, you can beat the single player in a couple of hours, and your main reaction might be, that's it? There is way more to this game than that. Not only is there a bunch of unlocks for a new game plus, but there's entirely different modes. There's a firefight mode, which is exactly what you would expect it to be. I'm not gonna focus on this one because it's standard. I'm gonna focus on the other mode, Rogue Steel. This mode basically turns Severed Steel into a roguelike. And that makes way too much sense for a game like this. Every level is relatively short and has its own objective. Nothing incredibly deep or tedious, usually just shoot a few targets, step on a few buttons, break a few things. So these short levels being shoved into a roguelike makes so much sense. And of course, you have a bunch of ways to optimize your experience. By default, you don't have to restart an entire run when you die, but if you like permadeath, then turn on permadeath. That option is there. There's also a bunch of cards you will gain access to. At the end of every level, you will have the option to pick a new card. Not all of these are good, some of these are negative. These actually change how you play the game. In fact, one of these turns your arm into a gravity gun. When you finish runs, you will also get points that you can use to get new cosmetics. I can't begin to describe how much replay value this adds to the game. I don't know why this wasn't here on launch. This is a really good idea. For all I know, they have been working on this since launch, they just didn't have it in the game till now. Anyway, that about sums it up. What's my final opinions on Severed Steel? Well, it's not incredibly deep in the story and lore perspective, but it doesn't need to be. This game fixates on having really good gameplay, and it does that incredibly well. I have no actual real complaints. I can't even nitpick about this game. It's just fun. It's one of those games where after you play it for 5 to 10 minutes, you'll know whether or not you like Severed Steel. Personally, I think it really is a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend it. Sure. That's what I meant to do. Yeah, definitely. And that about sums it up. Huge thanks to everyone that joined me on Twitch when I streamed this game. If you subscribe to my Twitch, you get to see my videos at least 1 week ahead of time, usually much more than that. And even if you don't, all is good. Huge thanks to everyone that watched me over here on YouTube. I could not do this without you.